back for another two-bottle tasting series here at WineSpectatorTastings.com. We've got an awesome, fun one today with Terlato wines, and we're going to start with their Pinot Grigio and then move on to a property that they own in Napa Valley called Chimney Rock and taste one of their Cabernets from the very famous and very delicious Stag's Leap region of Napa. So, Travis, this is kind of interesting. We normally we talk about one specific winery, we talk about one specific region. What's the thread that connects these today?
Yeah, well, what unites these two wines is a man, actually, and really a pioneer in the wine industry in America, a man named Tony Terlato. Came from humble beginnings as a young boy, really working in his parents' wine shop in Chicago. And then over the decades, went on to transform the wine industry in America, focusing on high quality wines, imports, and really forging important partnerships with restaurants and cultivating restaurant wine programs in the United States. And so that's the thread that connects these two exciting wines, and I'm excited to go through and taste their differences and really be able to celebrate Tony. For some of our viewers may know that unfortunately Tony just passed away in June 2020. So we're honoring his memory here, and so excited to taste what the company is doing now.
Yeah, it's to me, I've always said wine is one of the last really great multi-billion global industries that's still connected by people. And in some ways, watching Hamilton again and kind of think of like the founding fathers and how there's individuals that impacted our country. I look back and look at wine in the US, and there's definitely this small little group, kind of like our founding fathers of wine. And like seeing Tony's story and hearing about, like, he was the first guy to import Frank Schumacher's wines, Alexis Lachines wines, seeing photos of him and Robert Mondavi, in '69, sharing a table and bringing Mondavi's wines to Chicago. And it's just crazy to think about how far the US has come as a wine drinking country. And it really was some pioneers that kind of helped spread that culture of wine should be enjoyed. It should be, shared with families and friends. And it's not this elite beverage. And to me, kind of a perfect segue is into Pinot Grigio, because it's the ultimate white wine for the masses. And I mean that in the best possible way, because, Travis, what about summertime and Pinot Grigio for you?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And Tony was really responsible for introducing that grape to American wine drinkers. And for me, at the time you had Americans who were beginning to become familiar with Chardonnay, right? Or even some German wines that were a little sweeter at the time. For me, Pinot Grigio is one of those wines that does two things. First of all, it's subtle. It's a great kind of blank canvas white wine in that it's very, very accessible and can go well with lots of different kinds of food. But because it's a little quieter and a little more subtle, I think there's a period in your wine drinking journey where you come back to Pinot Grigio where you may have thought it as something sort of simple and quaffable, and really begin to appreciate how subtle and how complex it can actually be. And so for me, Pinot Grigio is wonderful just by itself, on the porch on a hot summer day, but it can actually go really brilliantly with, again, subtler cuisine. So I'm thinking pastas that are dressed lightly with cream sauces, with poultry that's just been very, very lightly seasoned, with all kinds of crudités and vegetables. Pinot Grigio can really shine in that way.
Yeah, and this one, the Terlato, is from Vineyards in Friuli, which is up in the northeast part of Italy. A lot of people kind of see that as like the benchmark area for crisp, clean, refreshing white wines. And a big part of that was just they were the first to kind of go all in on let's, actually clean up fermentation, chill it down, get out of these old dirty barrels. Let's try some stainless steel and kind of have a modern white. And it worked out perfect because Italy itself, and I love it, they drink almost as much wine per capita as anyone in the world. But unlike France, there's like zero pretentiousness about it. And like every meal you go to, there's wine served, and it's spectacular. And it's just something that's there to enjoy with food. And more times than not, Italian wines have this wonderful kind of crisp acidity and then a little bit of bitterness. And when I'm having food, it's like the perfect way to like end every bite, get me ready for another sip. And Pinot Grigio just is so good at doing that.
Yeah, so for me, one of the first things I appreciate about fine Pinot Grigio is if you look at the color of it, it actually has a very slight brassiness to it. And for me, that's indicative of quality Pinot Grigio. It's showing a little bit of potentially skin contact and a little bit of interaction with the lees or the yeast in the winery to, again, give it a little extra texture and to contribute some interesting subtle flavors. From the nose right away, it's bursting with beautiful citrus fruit notes. So lemon, lots of yellow apple and yellow pear. but then there's some savory aspects to it as well. I touched on almond skin already. There's marzipan, and even a little bit of a subtle kind of malted note, almost like a fine Pilsner beer. I know that sounds strange, but it's something I get a lot in Pinot Grigio.
Just got that almost like biting into a key lime. It's like sour, sweet, sour citrus. And very much like beer, what I love about Pinot Grigio is you don't have to think about it to understand it. It's just one of those things that chill it down, drink it, and next thing you know, the bottle's gone. And there's just something absolutely kind of Goldilocks about it, where it's big enough to hang with a lot of foods like Chardonnay can, but it's also light enough that it will roll with the lighter foods. So, but it's not as the commitment that say a Sauvignon Blanc is, because Sauvignon Blancs are just kind of loud. And there's just something about having this just super drinkable, great white wine that goes with almost anything and everything, especially summer. All right. So as we're trying to connect the dots here, and for me, wine is always about connecting the dots, the stories, the people, the Tony Terlato story, father of Pinot Grigio. How do we connect that to Chimney Rock? And we're really lucky because we got with us Elizabeth Vianna, who is the winemaker for Chimney Rock, and she's about to join us. So Elizabeth, please welcome to the show. We're thrilled to have you and excited to taste your delicious wine.
Hi, Pete. Hi, Travis. Thank you so much for having me. It's actually perfect timing because we just finished our harvest, so I'm a little bit calmer, and it feels nice to sit down and share a glass of wine with you both.
Awesome. I'd have to imagine there's been a few beers consumed in the last week or two as well, or probably shot the whiskeys with the all the stress and extra drama this season has brought. Now, growing up in Napa, I distinctly remember Chimney Rock first and foremost as like this amazing 9-hole golf course. And when did the golf course go away? And like now it's like, I think that just blows people's minds. Like, wait, there used to be a golf course right there, and now it's some pretty amazing wines.
Well, originally it was actually an 18-hole golf course, and the first 9 holes were pulled out when the first vines were planted back in the early 80s. And then when the Terlato family became investors in the property, they pulled out the last 9 holes. And I still find golf balls in our vineyard. So the spirit of golf lives on at Chimney Rock, but we make pretty good Cabernet, and it's Stags Leap District, so you can't go wrong there.
Nice. I might have lost one of those balls. That might have been mine. So, I find if I bring like a ball for every hole, I usually can make it through the course. But anyways, we digress. So how did you get to know Tony? And to me, it's an interesting company because it has always been about family, and I imagine that you had to probably be pretty close with all of them.
Well, I was very lucky. I was a girl who just gotten out of Davis who wanted to make Cabernet for a living. That was my grape. And I happened to do an internship here at Chimney Rock back in 1999 before the Terlatos had become owners. And shortly after I graduated, I'd been working in the business for a little bit. The assistant winemaker here at Chimney Rock left in 2002, so I came in just as the Terlatos were getting involved, and Tony and I became very fast friends. I mean, he became one of my great mentors in life. He was just, I mean, truly a wine legend and somebody that I learned so much from, and somebody who supported me. And the result of the friendship and seeing eye to eye with the family and what's important and growing great grapes for wine. Here I am 18 years later, because I really respect their vision and their sort of relentless pursuit of quality.
Fantastic. And then 18 years in Napa and doing Cabernet, what would you say is the biggest shift in your style, or has it shifted? Just smelling it, I love it because it actually seems a little restrained. There's a few out there that are almost, I dare say port-like, and this is nice that it's actually reserved and doesn't taste like port. So thank you.
Yeah, I think that's one of the marks of our style, and it has been for a long time. I will tell you, I think Napa's been through a journey where things maybe got a little too ripe. And I think we've come back to center a little bit. And I've always been, and because I've worked with these vineyards for so long, I think I discovered very early on that nothing replaced the freshness of fruit. That really, getting overripe, you start to lose typicity of the grape. So I really am a kind of middle of the road gal. I really love finesse and I love freshness and power. But I think just, I want to smell Cabernet in our cabs. I think that's really important.
Yeah, one of the things I appreciate about this wine, and sometimes I've noticed some Napa winemakers hate this when I say it, but I think it's typical for Cabernet Sauvignon, is you get just a hint of very subtle herbaceous character, which for me is just a part of Cabernet. And for me, that comes through with mint, with a touch of tobacco and sage that I find incredibly appealing. It balances out the fruit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Stag's Leap District, we're nestled against the southeastern hills of Napa, so a little bit more influenced by the cooling breezes of San Pablo Bay. And I think, it's interesting. We've got about 105 acres, 26 distinct blocks on our property. The north end is a little warmer and a little bit more, what you would think of as typical Napa. But as you go south, you get a little bit of those old world characteristics and little bay leaves, some mint, some dried herbs, which I really love. I think what's beautiful about Cabernet is when it's layered and not just jammy, and that's what we try to tell the tale of these vineyards in a very pure way.
Elizabeth, I'd be curious because the vineyards, it sounds like you're getting close to about 30, 40 years old on them. And I know the typical Bordeaux model, you'd be replanting. What is your philosophy on that? Is there plans? Have you talked about it? Have you thought about it? It's kind of a crazy thing because Napa, it's more celebrate old vines, where Bordeaux, it's like every 30, 40 years, rip it out and replant for like the best Cabernet vineyards.
Yeah, interestingly, we haven't really approached it from a formulaic standpoint. We very much look at it block by block. So half of the property was replanted in the early 90s because of phylloxera. So those vines are about 30 years of age. When the Terlatos pulled those last additional 9 holes, those vines were planted 18 years ago. So we've got this really nice blend of, I would say, older vines.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think there is something to older vines producing wines of power and depth. And I think unless you have issues from, viral pressure to really maybe bad trunk diseases that vines can get over age, I see no need to pull them out. So as long as they're producing amazing fruit, don't mess with a great thing. And we've gone to great lengths in the vineyards. We use the Simonette and Cirque pruning method, which really thinks about the longevity of the vine and the way that you prune vineyards. So I think, we're doing everything we can to make these babies live a really long, productive life.
Great. And what are your thoughts on blending? Are we dealing with 100% Cabernet Sauvignon here, or are we throwing in some other Bordeaux grapes like Merlot, Cab Franc, Petit Verdot?
Yeah, so we do have Petit Verdot, Cab Franc, and Merlot on the estate, and typically every vintage is a representation of what's best on the estate. So this particular vintage is actually about 75% Cabernet, 23% Merlot, and 2% Petit Verdot. Cabernet in 17 had quite a bit of muscle and really needed some rounding out. It was kind of a warm, concentrated year. And, this wine I think of as the ambassador to our property. So I really want it to tell a very approachable story and really be kind of a time capsule to bring you back here in 2017. And you can close your eyes and imagine it was a warm year. And this wine is a reflection of that.
Yeah, I mean, on the nose for me, it's just that classic cassis currant. And it was great. I was like teaching a wine class the other day, and someone's like, "What is a currant?" And I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" Like, it's like halfway between like, a grape and a blueberry, but better than both in some sense. And this just has that like black currant cassis. And then for me, I get your herbal note, Travis, but for me, it's almost going even a little bit more resiny to like rosemary, which is kind of cool. And then I love too that there's just, I get that kind of plum note, and I don't know if there's a good chunk of Merlot. I think you said this one was 75% cab, but I get that kind of plum chocolate thing, which I would associate with Merlot. And then deep below that's kind of this violet candied violet thing, which I would guess is probably the Petit Verdot. But it's a pretty nose, and I love that each time I go back to it, there's more in there.
Yep, I love you get it on the palate. you know right away that you're dealing with great Napa Valley Cabernet. But it has a little bit of rockiness and a slight texture to it that, again, I don't know if this power of suggestion just makes me think of Stag's Leap District, where you get that almost echoes of Bordeaux or something in it, where it's this mineral character, and then really great judicious use of oak here too. So that little rich vanilla, that toastiness, which makes it so appealing when it's young, but is going to help carry all of the structure of the wine and those tannins as it begins to age, and I love that about it.
Yeah, and for me, it's crazy. It's got that little bit. If you're using the Bordeaux analogy, it's almost that pencil shaving going into floral, and it reminds me of Margot. Like if I had to pick which commune in Bordeaux Stag Leaf reminds me the most of, it's like Margot.
Oh, I totally agree. We've actually drawn that parallel quite a bit. So that's love that you see that.
A little while ago, you used the metaphor of time travel, or wine being like the ability to travel back in time when you were talking about the 2017. Over your career, have you found that is there a sweet spot in terms of what age range you like most to drink these wines, or what do you think? Is it 5 years? Is it 10 years? Is it 15?
I think it depends on who you're drinking it with, what you're eating, what's the reason, and that was one of the things that I learned from Tony. Every wine had an occasion and every meal was an occasion. So one of my fondest memories with him is just sitting around a table and there would be five magnificent bottles and he had a story about every one. And there's a reverence, right, for that really thinking about why is this bottle special right now. So my sweet spot, I'm a winemaker, so I'm like hopelessly curious and I tend to try things too soon. But I love Cabernet in its 8 to 12 kind of year age because you really get some of the primary characteristics, but you're really starting to enter kind of that development phase. But look, there's nothing like opening, I think, sometimes a 25-year-old bottle or a 30-year-old bottle. And it's so moving because it's almost like a relic. And to be transported in time, I mean, I think that's really meaningful. So I think we should never let go of the idea of aging wines and cellaring them for a long time because that's a wonderful thing. But if I were to say, the prime stage to taste a wine with food and enjoy, I think with the Cabernet, I love kind of the 8 to 12 year range.
Thank you for bringing that up because that to me is always the best showing for wine is with food and good company. And I love that, the stories of Tony having like the kitchen and the table at the warehouse, and that setting down and having lunch during business was significant and important. And we're, really proud to offer through Del Frisco's Double Eagles a meal kit with these 2 bottles of wine, Caesar salad, and a couple steaks. So hopefully you can get together with some friends, pick up the bottles, the meal kit, and have a great dinner, make some memories of your own. Because ultimately, for me, that's what wine's about: is when you can have that connection with great wines, great friends, and that's as good as it gets.
Couldn't agree more.
Elizabeth, one last question, because I know that you've done a lot with Stag's Leap and the AVA. How would you sum up what makes Stag's Leap so special in Napa? I mean, because Napa itself is pretty special, but you're in kind of a really special part of it. So give us the Stag's Leap elevator pitch, please.
So, it's a unique set of conditions, right? It's geography, geology, and climate. And we happen to be a valley within Napa Valley. We have these massive Vaca Mountains right behind us. And then there's a low set of lying hills across the way. And that has a way of funneling cooler air in from San Pablo Bay in a way that's different from the rest of Napa Valley. The Vaca Mountains are this massive outcropping of bedrock and old volcanic soils that are super well drained. So you get this yin and yang of warmth, because warmth gets trapped in the heat of those Palisades, and then cool. And so I think you get the magic of the right formula for aging Cabernet, which is ripe tannins, but great acidity to balance that out. That's my pitch.
That was good. Well, and it made me think, like, is this where the name Chimney Rock comes from? Is it referring to maybe one of those like hot rock palisades that's on property, or?
Yeah, there is a rock formation up in the Palisades that is supposed to be chimney rock. I think you can't actually see it from my side. Apparently it's on the other side. But that also gave name to the Chimney Rock golf course. So we've carried that name for a few decades.
Well, and also too, just out of curiosity, have you ever seen a cow on the Baca Mountains? Like, I've never seen a cow, and even like Vacaville, you don't see cows. I'm confused. Like, is it one of those, like, housing developments where it was named after something that was never there, like Montrachet in downtown Napa? Anyways, I'm going off. Travis, do you?
We have seen a stag or two and a mountain lion. So
Yeah.
But no cows.
Well, Elizabeth, it's been a pleasure talking with you. Thank you so much for joining us and being able to talk about the winery and about Tony's legacy. And for all of you joining us at home, thanks again for tuning into the Wine Spectator 2-bottle tastings. Have a wonderful week, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah. Cheers, everyone.
Cheers.
Have a great one.